Hey, my name is Barry Sankey, and I'm glad to be with you this afternoon. I'm going to be talking from time to time, getting on, trying to establish myself into the complex world of controversy that's going on. For no other reason than I'm not a scholar. I'm not your average, you know, uh, big shot. I'm not trying to be politically acclaimed PhD. My PhD is more or less poor, hungry, and driven. Because from the beginning, I've been out here in this fight. I've been noticing the way that we kind of like go about our day to day. Everybody has their own way that they were evolved, how they came about, their philosophy of life, and things like that. So, with mine in mind, I'm trying to pick up some of the missing pieces to this complex thing. We have people that's supposed to be leaders. We've had leaders that have come and gone. We've had great leaders. We've had, but one thing we kind of tend to keep rolling past important and vital things, because we're so anxious to get to the point that we think that we can relax or we can take it easy or things have gotten better. But you know, you always have to go back and roll the tape back. I'm pretty sure everybody that goes into these situations where they practice uh, or claim to practice what they preach, every now and then, if they're honest with themselves, they have to go back and reassess what did I accomplish with that. So, you know, that's more or less what's brought me into this. For years, I've watched people, and I've either been a participant or non-participant. That's always been my philosophy at day one. A lot of things I got myself into, and I believe that when I did that, it was up to me. It was my responsibility to get myself out. Reason being is because we have been taught by our environment, our parents, our first source of education, and it depends on when that engagement actually took place, the path and direction in which you will take later on. And sometimes you take that path, and because a lot of times you're in the, it depends on who's leading you. And your first leadership should be at home. I mean, role models outside the house are like way down on the list. Even though I took great a lot of, well, I had to basically because my father, I wrote a book, Spin Black Project is what my subtitle to my book. My book is called Seven Cuts of Wood. And in Seven Cuts of Wood, I talk about, a lot of times we give this, certain dynamic for people who don't have a father. Well, I had a father, but it was like I didn't have a father in one regard, and in another regard, I did. And I think what we have to do when we go back and we start assessing the way we evolve, the way we grow, like you got Whole Foods. Sometimes you don't have whole situations that you grew up in. Why? Because your people were not programmed from the get go the way we would deem our search for something whole. You don't know it, they don't know it. And it's not their fault, but that's just the reality of the situation. My father was a respected minister, and he was a self-taught man. He went to some uh, he went to Moody Bible Institute. He went to a couple other colleges, and but he was more like I took that path myself, and for no other reason that I just don't like all this structure, like, and you have to have the choice in that too. I mean, some amount of structure is good, certain amount isn't. When I say part that I didn't like is when we complain about how we are We say we in a racist society and this is bad for us, nothing bad for us. But then we always say, well, you got to get your education. Well, your education is rooted and sourced in that which you say you don't like. So there's got to be a little balance there too. You got to be a little bit you take, a little bit you don't. Um, it took me uh, a while to understand my father. I don't think he did it all on purpose. I think that was, like I said, it's what your input is. You know, when we look at the computer, you know, it's designed right after us. Our whole makeup. We come into the world, we are without a lot of training. We don't come in programmed for anything. It's what is inputted into us, and that's why our parents become that first source, that first line of defense, offense. What you really get as your uh, tactical resources for how you will become a citizen, become the person that you want to be, or a lot of times you don't even know what you want to be. You just kind of shape it after what you've been shown. So for some parents, for my father, he showed me to God because that's all he was. As a young man, he was a young minister. I think he was a minister ordained like 20 years old, and he put a lot of time in to those studies, all kind of religions, and that's another thing that I valued from him was his self search. You know, okay, and this should be never ending, no matter what we do in life. Uh, you you got to take your structure, and then around that substructure you got to find interest out of what you get, and then apply something else to it. You know, make it uh, adhesive to you, stick to you, because you can go to school, nothing sticks. It's like, okay, you sit there and you try and retain a whole lot of stuff, but when you catch something that's interesting to you, then you got input. And from that input, man, you can, then you can leak in and start hitting resources and this, that, and the other. And that's what my father was. He was one of those kind of guys. And so I try and, I grew up trying to, be somewhat like that, and got better at it as I grew older. First, I was always trying to escape that prison I seen like I thought I was in, that I really wasn't in. It was really a protective barrier. And but all of it shaped and made me what I am today. So our problems start at home. They end at home. What we have to do is kind of like keep in mind too. Don't wait too late to try and get into your kids' heads. I'm like, uh, you know, from the old school, a lot of talk wasn't really being done. They didn't really tell you a whole lot until they thought it was necessary. That's usually too late in our society because everything is so fast, everything is so speeded up now. You have to hit it before it gets to that point because everything is like triple uh, categorized against you. So you got religion, you got education, you got all these things that's being shoved into a kid at a young age. And a lot of us, when we're young, our parents take us to church before we really want to know. We don't even know where we at. We just know that's what we become a part of that. But then you research it, you become a part of something else. You become your own person as you start growing up, and that's what I'm saying. Or you take that little bit that sticks to you. Some things, boom, they go in and they go into your subconscious. They get down there, and and then you start uh, recanting that and start building to that, and that's what gives us all our individuality. So we got too many different brands for what is the successful route. I don't think you can really claim that. You got people say, well, you know. He didn't have parents. He didn't have a father. He didn't have this. He didn't have that. But then you see this person later on down the road. He turned out better than a whole lot of people. You think, oh well, he didn't have anything, but he wound up with a whole lot. Well, you know, that's the give and take between what you hold on to, what is intended for you, how you take responsibility for those things and move forward. Myself, I grew up with a bunch of guys in my own neighborhood. We grew up, all of us had fathers, but they had no interest in what we were doing. I mean, they didn't know anything about raising us in that uh, setting. Their setting was completely different from their growing up. So the setting that they had to give us completely different. Now, this didn't mean that they had a lack of love, but they had a lack of direction, what their focus was on. And so, growing up in a whole different society around that, uh, it kind of, you know, it was a separation still there. So, in these kind of talks that I want to do, what I want to do is try and be able to merge those two, give purpose to both sides, because they had a path that is sometimes overlooked in this new world, which gives credence to uh, definitely commitment and focus. On this side, we have to be more astute, more adaptable. You got to be able to press a little harder in different directions. Now, uh, when we get a little further into some of these talks, I want to be able to put uh, my book out. I want to be able to read some things from the book. I want to be able to bring the scriptures in, because when I wrote my book, that's how I wrote it. I wrote it because at different times it was different things that motivated me, but I'd heard things that I was able to, motivated me right or wrong, but I was able to go back, fall back on it because it was there to fall back on. And that's another thing, you know, uh, what we, like I said, it's what we're introduced to. Some of us, I've known people I've talked to say they had uh, never uh, read the Bible. You know, you got people that now and when you look on YouTube, you got groups. The Bible's this, the Bible's that. It's not anything. It was this, it was a lie. It was this, it was that. Well, just like you took that education, that book, whatever you learned out of it, you had a choice whether you could use it for good or evil. So I know we hear about the black man and the white man's world, two different worlds, and this was stuff, and that's true. I agree with a whole lot of both sides of that. But in that, you have to try and always be able to be aware of what's good and what's useful and what's not. Uh, if if you went trapped into a certain situation, despite it not being your manner of doing things or way of life, language, whatever, if you could use it to save, to persevere, to surge forward, to find your way, then what's the beef? What's the talk? We talk so much about things that sometimes we don't evaluate. And there we go. I'm going back to the evaluation process. We don't evaluate those things that we learn. Yes, uh, man, life was, it's amazing. Life was in the neighborhood or in families didn't seem half as bad because of the climate, the the gauge on certain situations. Now everything is turned up so high that even though it's better, it seems worse. It seems worse because it's coming at you so fast, and you don't have any fallback plan, nothing to fall back on. And that's what the old school brings to the new school. Now, when I was a young guy, like in my book, I write about hanging my father first, being a young man, talking to older people, being a servant of God, put him in a situation where he was preaching to older people. I used to sit and listen to them talk. Then I grew up, he had older brothers. Come to find out, his mother and his father died. So he's raised by his older brother. His older brother kind of made it easy for me to take my place in understanding him because, you know, when you're a kid and you growing up, I don't care who, what man, a man will always want to have that connection, that admiration of knowing that he did something to please his father, something that he could be proud of. And that may be, if you don't have one, if you never met one and you didn't have that, you can dream better than you of one better than you can have one that never show you one. Because if one never shows you to that point, then there's no speculation. It is what it is. But then you have to move forward. Like I said, move forward. Find out why. Don't leave it there. That's what I was able to do. I was able to find out there is, in all people's case, every situation, there is a root. There is a root that leads back to why a situation is what it is. And that is something that in the olden days, you can find that. You can find that more prevalent. Now, if it's not on, we Google and this, that, and the other, that doesn't help you in the sense that sometimes it's just something that you came up on right quick and you got it, and you go right on to the next thing. We basically we're engaged all the time. When does what you find out? When does what you learn become something that you can meditate on, that you can marinate? Like a good steak. If you just take a steak and you smear something on it, right there and then throw it in there. It tastes all right, but it's not going to be as good as if you let the ingredients marinate before you do what you do. And that's what we don't have time to do these days. And that's what we need to get back to. And you'll say, well, we don't have time. What? The hands on the clock haven't changed. The minute haven't changed. Time is what you make out of it. And sometimes you realize you waste more time not knowing how to truly use it. And if you did utilize it and took patience in it and got the value out of it, the value of time is sometimes having the confidence and the patience to make it a quality event. You know, it's like I said, don't just throw something, don't slap something together, So uh, I'm gonna wind down here and try and close this out for right now. See how you know, see how my next coming to you will be, where I'm gonna take it from, because I mentioned a few things that I want to bring up. Uh, Scripture. I'm gonna bring in some history books. I want to talk from things that uh, need to be talked about and try and just get some dialogue, between the generations. Because I'm a 70s, 60s, 70s. I was born in the 50s. My main uh, thing, 60s and 70s. I think we kind of like everything kind of falls back to us. So because we at the beginning of the hip hop and we at the end of a lot of things that happened with the civil rights. So we right there in the middle. And I'm really gonna touch on a lot of this because we get short-sighted on the quick responses and the go forwards. So I'm gonna push some buttons, gonna make a lot of people upset on a lot of things I'm gonna say, but I will hope that you will give it some time, marinate on it, and see that I'm on point.